Votes are still being counted and lawsuits filed by the Trump campaign. They're still pending in certain states, calling out irregularities in the voting process, although there have been cases of uncounted ballots being found and allegations that voting machines may have been hacked or compromised. Is there sufficient evidence to prove widespread voter fraud? And if so, did irregularities tilt the election in favor of Joe Biden? With deadlines approaching to show such proof, chairman of the American Conservative Union and co-chairman of the Catholics for Trump, Matt Schlapp, is here with a quick update. Matt, where do things stand at the moment? The Biden campaign's already moved to transition mode. Trump campaign lawyer Sidney Powell suggested, well, I'll play bites. This is a bite of Sidney and Rudy Giuliani. Listen.
We cannot allow these crooks, because that's what they are, to steal an election from the American people. Joe Biden is in the lead because of the fraudulent ballots, the illegal ballots that were produced and that were allowed to be used after the election was over. Give us an opportunity to prove it in court, and we will.
We are going to take this country back. We are not going to be intimidated. We are not going to back down. We are going to clean this mess up now. President Trump won by a landslide. We are going to prove it.
Matt, I want your reaction to this. And what irregularities have you seen that you can prove so far?
Yeah, Raymond, I've been involved in politics and in campaigns my entire adult life. I'm here in Las Vegas now. When I hit the ground with the expert team we have on the ground, we have found tens of thousands of examples of illegal ballots which are already in the count. The biggest treasure trove of illegal ballots are these ballots that the president warned us about that went through the mail. Half the ballots in the state of Nevada went through the mail. And election officials and the Democrats in charge of the state assured everyone, including in the court of law, that there would be a security process by which illegal votes would be kicked out. And what we found in Nevada is those ballots were thrown into the count. And that means that there's enough fraud in Nevada to overturn the results and give the 6 electoral votes to Donald Trump. It's similar themes in Pennsylvania and Georgia, although the facts are slightly unique to each state.
Mm-hmm. This presser today was supposed to lay out paths to victory. I haven't seen those, though. Rudy and the others there weren't really clear on what the path to victory looks like. Do you know what it is?
Yeah, I do. The first step is we have to talk about facts, math, and science. We have to show the American people and half the country that believes that these election results should be challenged. The facts of voter irregularity. As I said, in this state, there's so much of it, it would actually flip the result. The second thing is we have to walk through why there were problems with all sorts of machines, not just Dominion machines, but also the signature check machine they used in the state of Nevada. If the president's team will continue to talk about the facts of voter fraud, the facts of not having observers on the ground, and in this state alone, Raymond, I wish I had the prop with me right now, 800 sworn statements from people that saw illegal activity in the state of Nevada, dead people voting, minors voting, people voting in 2 states, people voting who had told the post office they were moving out of Nevada. It's time consuming to walk through this. So in the state of Nevada, we've now filed a lawsuit. We'll see as the judge gets picked. This should be adjudicated within 10 days. We'll then have to consider the next step if we don't win at that step. But there is time to make sure that the legal processes are well used, because I remember in 2000, when I spent 36 days in the Florida recount, we didn't have a winner to the feast day of Our Lady of Guadalupe in December. So the Constitution allows for the President of the United States to take the steps he needs to make sure only legal ballots are counted. As of now, that's just simply not the case.
Matt, there have been 26 lawsuits or so, 26 and change, filed. Most of those, the vast majority of them, have been thrown out of court. What do you have confidence that these other lawsuits that the Trump campaign is mounting, that they'll stick?
So I'm going to go back to the 2000 example, Raymond. Once again, the Bush campaign lost almost every legal challenge until they were eventually victorious. And in that case, they were victorious in the Supreme Court. The standard the Supreme Court used, by which it got more than 5 votes, is you can't have 2 standards to consider whether or not a ballot is legal. In each one of these contested states, if you voted by mail, like in the state of Georgia, for instance, there was no verification that you were a legal voter. If you voted in person, there was more stringent steps to make sure you were a voter. In the state of Nevada, we have hundreds of sworn statements from Republicans who were legally registered, yet not allowed to vote for one reason or another when they experienced the Democrat machine in their polling place. So these 2 standards of justice, 2 standards of civil rights, the Supreme Court has always struck that down. These are very real civil rights questions.
Let's talk about which states the courts might overturn. I mean, Michigan has certified its vote. They claim Joe Biden's the winner. Is that going to be overturned by a court? And what about Georgia? This recount is nearing. It doesn't appear it's moving in the direction of the president. What's next?
Well, I believe in these states where you have, I know that when you have certification, it's an important sounding word. It's an important step in the process. But after certification, the president still has his right as a citizen of the United States to adjudicate that outcome in court. Now, the standard is high. We have to prove the fraud. We have to prove that there was a disparate set standard used for ballots. We have to show the irregularities and the undemocratic processes. I believe, from what I've seen in the state of Nevada, that we have thousands and thousands of examples that will be acceptable in court. I've talked to the people in Georgia. Basically, what happened in Georgia is the Secretary of State, outside the law, signed a consent decree because he was scared of Stacey Abrams, which meant no signature verification for the ballots. A third of the ballots in Georgia went through the mail. They had no signature verification. Think about that, Raymond. That's just not acceptable in the United States of America. That's going to have to be adjudicated in court. Philadelphia, there's so many examples of un-American, undemocratic activity. It's similar. As I said, each state is unique. But if what I've seen in Nevada is true in each one of these states, and I believe it is, 73.3 million Americans were essentially disenfranchised.
I have to tell you, I sat through the press conference at the RNC today. I wasn't there personally, but I watched it. What you just said, Matt, is a lot clearer, I think, to Americans listening than what we heard there. It was it seemed like very broad charges. The president won by a landslide. There were corruption in the machines. Venezuela and Hugo Chavez was brought up. I think it starts pinging around the heads of Americans and they can't process it. The president's still refusing to concede the election. He's not required to do so. But what should he be doing until his legal teams either prove or fail to prove their cases? What would you advise him?
He should continue to be our president. He should take every appropriate step to make sure that his policies continue to flower. He should make sure that people are held accountable for wrongdoing, that all the accusations from the previous presidential election. I want a big, vigorous, energetic president. At the same time, I do believe that the legal strategy around this clearly illegal behavior in these states, just tell the facts, talk about how it impacts the math, and talk about the science of computers and machines that weren't used according to standards. If we continue to talk about that, I think we have a very compelling civil rights case that American voters were not treated in an equal manner. And I think that that's just something, as a country, that is a very dangerous thing to not uncover all the truth. If we just simply uncover everything and let everybody see it, including the media, even those that are disinterested, it's a heck of a compelling story that the results in these states should be questioned.
I want to shift gears very slightly. The Washington Post this week reports that Biden means to end the Hyde Amendment, should he be president-elect and president, so the federal government can use taxpayer dollars to pay for abortions. He intends to reinstitute the Obamacare mandate, meaning the Little Sisters of the Poor and all these religious groups will have to pay for abortifacients and contraceptives for their employees. Is this, do you think, what Catholics signed up for? And how is this healing, do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I was just thinking that, Raymond. This is not uniting. Taking nuns to court to make them pay for abortion-inducing drugs is not uniting. Telling people of faith in this country that they have to start not only accepting the idea that abortion is legal, but somehow participating in it through our healthcare system and paying for it. This is not uniting. This is so seriously a source of division in the country that I worry on top of this election, if Joe Biden is declared the winner of this election, if he moves forward on this radicalized agenda attacking people of faith, I worry about where our country is going to go. And if we can get through all of this, he would be much more better advised to take a step back and to think about the reason why the Catholic vote voted against him. And he should try to think about ways to court it. And disrupting this long bipartisan tradition of the Hyde Amendment is the wrong way to start.
Okay, final question. You know what states are now being, where the Trump campaign is contesting the results in these states and the tallies. Which states do you believe the courts could overturn, and what is the president's path to victory? By my eye, he'd have to flip 5 of these states, Matt.
Well, I think in Georgia, he clearly won. It's this idea of no signature match, which the eminent lawyer Lynn Wood has the case on that. So I think that case is incredibly important to be able to demonstrate. Once again, a third of the votes in Georgia went through the mail, and there was tons of illegal voting that they had no method to cancel those ballots on. So that's the first step. Nevada, I also believe, is a state where we've demonstrated clearly evidence, tens of thousands of pieces of evidence, 800 sworn statements of people who saw the kind of corrupt system that was set up. Then you move forward and you look at the recount in Wisconsin in these 2 counties that the president has paid for. We have to see what the results are there as well. And then I think in Michigan and Pennsylvania, it comes down to this whole idea of, did they properly handle the mail-in ballots? Was there the proper democratic norms of observers? And Raymond, think about this. If these election results from these states had occurred overseas, there's a chance the UN wouldn't have accepted these results. There's a chance that our own State Department wouldn't have accepted these results. When Jimmy Carter gets on an airplane and goes to a foreign country to observe the elections, he doesn't have to do it, 100 yards away or trying to see through barriers. He gets to walk to the table, look at the ballots, touch the ballots, see what's happening. That should happen in America if we mandate that overseas.
If this doesn't go the president's way and the results stand as they are now, what should his posture be going forward?
There's one thing to concede and there's another thing to accept. The level of cheating that went on in this election is something that I am almost nauseated over. I can't believe what we've seen on the ground here in Las Vegas. It was always a rumor, but I've now got to wallow through the muck. So you can accept the result. It doesn't mean you have to give your acceptance of the fact that the process was fair. And I think you don't have to give your imprimatur to the results. I don't think I ever could after seeing what happened in Clark County. But there is acceptance over the fact that only one person is going to win this race. And I think the president moving forward should do what previous Republican presidents didn't do. He ought to stay in the game. He ought to stay on Joe Biden and criticize him when he's wrong. He ought to rally half of the country that believes that somehow this election didn't happen, just because it's almost mathematically impossible to pick up 10, 11, 12 House seats, pick up state legislative chambers, pick up a governorship, hold the Senate, and lose the presidency when the president overperformed most of those candidates. It just doesn't ring true to people. And I think he ought to stay on this, and we'll see what happens 4 years from now. But in the meantime, he's an American citizen. He ought to fully satisfy his rights so that most Americans can walk out of this election and feel like, even if it was close, that the law prevailed. If we don't do that, Raymond, we will never heal.